Our next speaker is Professor Sebastian Thrun. He's an CS Associate Professor in Computer Science at Stanford, known as the inventor of the robot car and head of the Stanford AI Lab. So without further ado, you have 20 minutes.
Okay, 19. I'm delighted to be here. I think the issues we're discussing are of fundamental importance, and it's what Doug said, important that we take a serious look at the future of this. I am a bit of an oddball as a speaker because I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to tell you something about a technology that we've inventing at Stanford and at many other places. Ray had this wonderful picture of what makes a human human, and he had things on the wall and things on the ground. And I very carefully noticed that a driver car is still on the wall. So from our definition of playing chess, something that involves real intelligence, to something you can do drunk, we're still left with certain areas that make us humans. And I'm just about to take this away from you. And it's clear to you that at some point in your future, you're better off trust your computer than driving yourself. Let's see. This is, in large part, a talk about the DARPA Grand Challenge as a technology that's coming out of artificial intelligence that in many ways was thought to be impossible a decade ago. DARPA, our main sponsor in computer science, has put almost $500 million into the development of, the Army as well, of unmanned vehicles. The vision there is that if you put self-driving cars into Iraq, for example, then you lose fewer soldiers and you can do different things. And after all this funding, they decided that the capabilities aren't quite there yet. So they came with a new model of saying, let's double the speed of the technology and make it more robust and cut all the funding. And instead give people prize money. So for Stanford, it was a good proposition because we cashed the prize. But so the race first took place in 2004. It was meant to be a robot race without a person inside a car and without any remote control. So basically a car programmed to go, in this case, from Barstow to Prim. Originally they wanted to go from Los Angeles to Vegas, but there's just too many kids in Los Angeles, you can't do that. So they went from Barstow to Prim, and you push a button on one end, and some like 10 hours later, the car arrives on the other end. 2004 was the first time it took place. You might have followed it. In fact, the fact that you're here probably means you did follow it because you're interested in technology. At the time, there used to be a little bit of sound here, about 135 or so teams registered and 17 or 15 raced. Half the teams kind of built their own vehicle, the other half used off-the-shelf SUVs. Everyone was concerned with programming these machines to be smart, and what came out of this was just a disaster. The furthest any team went was about 5% of the course. Some of them had no orientation, some of them had GPS points back from their home country or home state, and they drove backwards to their home state. Some had very severe control problems, like this one over here. I don't know if it's anyone from, this is the heaviest machine, 15 tons. Is anybody here from Cal? I hope not. Okay, because Cal had an entry as well. Coming out next. And they actually were very courageous. Anthony Lewandowski building a motorcycle, but not very successful. Here we go.
Demonstration, and off we go.
So,
good try, guys.
So clearly, riding a motorcycle must be human intelligence because we can do this better. In fact, Anthony told me he would double the performance of the Cal team this year. Now, the competition got stiffer in 2005, and what it really is a bit of a story of how we are at a critical juncture in driving. Some people said, when we went to 2005, all of a sudden we invented autonomous driving. That's, of course, entirely wrong. We're building on 30 years of history, but 30 years is actually nothing. And in the last 2 or 3 years, so much happened. We can now do these things, and I predict it's going to accelerate. And sure, if Ray gets handed the data, it's going to be exponential, no matter what. Let me tell you some of the basic problems that came up in building a winning entry here. First thing, you have to get the person out of the car and replace them by computers and sensors. Probably the most important sensor is what we use all the time, cameras or eyes. And very basic AI questions like what defines a road are actually fairly hard questions for us in SAIL and in artificial intelligence in general. So we had to come with innovative ways of doing very simple and mundane tasks that people can do really well, which is, what's flat to drive on and what is an obstacle. So if you drive into an obstacle, your race is over, and if you stay on the road, you win the race. The technological solutions aren't exactly human-like, although there's some resemblance. And they're really part of the history of finding new ways, like in chess, where we can build really fast computers to beat humans with completely different methods than humans play chess. They involved laser terrain acquisition and some sort of a probabilistic assessment of where obstacles. A laser scans the road as shown in this animation, and as it scans the road, can actually see vertical elevations and just drives around vertical elevations. So if you think about driving as an intelligent act, this is just fairly dumb compared to what humans do. And from there, you can actually build these wonderful road maps that allow it to assess where to drive. So red means there's danger. There could be a berm or a cliff. White means that's good and drivable. And the other lines basically are what the organizers gave us as a description of the race course, usually GPS referenced waypoints. And then to see really far, we had to move away from lasers. They don't see very far, and go into what humans do really well, vision, and see if we can basically build a vision system to find the road. And it turned out it took us months and months and months to write a simple computer piece of software to find the road. If you think of the most simple thing you can do in artificial intelligence, in perception, 30 years ago or today, is still a hard problem, finding a road. What we end up doing is, instead of solving the whole problem of what is a road, just solving kind of a bootstrap problem. We said our laser is perfectly capable of finding a road at near range. That gives us training examples, data of how road looks like, and then we can go into the scene and try to find the same stuff further out. And here's an example of this technique at work where you're driving through a desert. The red stuff is clearly road, and the blue stuff is non-road, and you can see at near range, we extract with the laser a small region and then use it to train the car. So the car adapts all the time, just like the way, to some extent, people adapt all the time. And the adaptation is really, really powerful. So here we go from one surface to another, and you can see the color jumping quite a bit. And that's just as the system learns how the road looks right now, we can actually adapt to it and use this model to extrapolate further out, and then see road up to 80-meter distance. Here you see the adaptation from paved road to grass road, for example, all of a sudden as the vehicle enters the grass road. Now, after about a year of work, we had a car that could actually drive hundreds of miles, and we have a lot of video documentation. I spare you some of the details. We weren't the only ones. In fact, Berkeley also was doing good work, and since this is the Bay Area, I can't resist putting up one more Cal video. The way these cars were then tested and down selected from 195 to eventually 23 and then eventually 1 was through what's called a qualification event, where cars were tested in a relatively complex environment using barriers, parked vehicles, as the one on the left side. And they had to make decisions of very, very simple and mundane form, not anywhere as complex as you'll do when you drive home drunk. Like, find the road, and if there's an obstacle, either go left or right, and that was pretty much it. And maybe slow down at the appropriate time. So there was some high-speed sections like this one, and in a second you'll see a tunnel that shielded the GPS reception. One of the key driving technologies here is something that people don't use at all for driving, which is GPS. It really helps vehicles to understand where they are, so these tunnels take that away. We weren't the only ones, and this is taken from a Nova documentary I recommend. It's an hour-long summary of what happened in the race. Just tell you what the state of the art of robotic intelligence really is. Truth revealed. Okay, so if you're afraid of that. In fact, I would be afraid of this in traffic, to be honest. There's some other examples coming up. Here's our favorite motorcycle again. They did the I should make this. This is one of the most amazing technologies I've actually seen. I have a lot of admiration for Anthony Lewandowski, who built this machine. The race itself was one of these moments that certainly I'll always remember in my life. Started 4 in the morning, we got a data file, a top secret data file, and gave us about 2 hours to put the data into our computers. It took us 20 seconds, and then we sat around and talked to the media for 1 hour, 59 minutes and something. And then the race was a staggered race. There was a Carnegie Mellon was actually the fastest at the time, and they got the first pole position, and we got the second, and so on. And there was a total of, 23 vehicles going out in the desert. So here's Stanley. When I look at this, I always have this kind of feeling of, I assume some of you are parents and have sent your kids to college. Like you work on this technology for so much time, and you spend so much time in the car, and you make it perfect, right? You're like a parent. And then the thing goes out by itself, and goes out just like a kid goes to college, and you hope it comes back without a dent, not having fallen down a cliff, maybe not pregnant, whatever you worry about as parent. And you just sit there, and you drink beer, and hang out, talk to the media, and Larry Page comes by, and lots of other people. Now, the cars drive, and they're pre-programmed to race. In this specific race, the race is very tight. 5 teams finished, and all of those equally deserve to be called a victor, although we're happy to have the cash because we were 11 minutes faster. The race started about 80 miles in the flats, and at some point, Carnegie Mellon developed an engine problem. Actually, this is the view that we saw. We just saw on a website these dots racing, vastly accelerated here. As the engine problem developed at Carnegie Mellon, this is Caltech doing a spectacular last maneuver at mile 22 or so. Here's a Silicon Valley entry whose sensor slipped off the roof, so they didn't have the right bolts in there, and then these guys lost the laptop along the way and crashed. At mile 80 or so, Carnegie Mellon developed an engine problem with a Hummer that they'd flipped about a week before the race, and then you can see Stanley at a range kind of closing in, and at mile 103 we were given the opportunity to pass the front-running vehicle, and from that point on we started leading the race. Let's see, there's still more footage coming up here. So this is a scene from Stanley's perspective, and the type of vision routines that I talked about are in effect. You can see the vehicle slightly colored blue as an obstacle. And Stanley, at this very moment, successfully drove around Carnegie Mellon's car. It recognized it as a piece of metal sitting in the desert and successfully avoided the collision. Emerged into what is by all means a treacherous mountain pass. Now for us driving this is kind of frightening because we can see the cliff on the left side, and we fear that falling down might be a final catastrophic event of the type just discussed. For a robot, that's actually just the same as flatlands because there's a berm in between, and the berm is the real risk. So Stanley descended this mountain pass and then emerged from the desert. Coming out of the desert, we're all sitting outside and waiting for our own creation to come back. It was a big moment for us, of course. First you see a helicopter, and then you see a little bit of dust, and you think there might be something moving. And then you start realizing, wow, the car could actually do it. And then you see a blue dot, and finally the thing comes closer and closer. And then you're being buried in water and champagne, and then you have no clue what's going on. You say all kinds of strange things to the media, and then you get a $2 million check. Let's see. Thank you. Critiques of this race, just like critiques of chess and other innovations, have said this is not the real thing. You're not in traffic. You're just in an empty desert, and they're right. And DARPA created, with Stanford's participation, the next grand challenge, urban driving. So if between now and if you live in Palo Alto for the next 18 months, be careful. We do experiments. It's hard. It's really hard. There's really hard AI problems in that we are able to perceive scenes like those effortlessly, whereas robots have a really hard time. Now, in the few minutes that I have left, and we try to stick to 20 minutes here, I want to just give my personal reflections on some questions. I don't claim to be an authority. I'm just the director of the AI lab, but not a visionary. Does it take away from human identity? You know, if you identify yourself with a fast sports car, then it does, and rightfully so. Okay. If you really care about that, then go back, or whatever, 400 years where 97% of the human population used to be in agriculture, and worry that you not working in agriculture takes away from your identity. I don't think this is an issue, because all we do is we're building technology that enables people to be more successful, not to replace people. The core of AI today is about making people more effective. Like the core of the Industrial Revolution was not about replacing people, it made people more effective. Now, is this finally the advent of strong AI? That's actually a point where I have a profound disagreement with people like Hans Moravec. In that, in all these exponential growth curves that I usually see, I see them for computing, I see them for memory, but I never see them for core AI. Like some of the key questions that we have, like how does perception work? I would claim that AI is still somewhat in its infancy. For us to even tell a tumbleweed from a bush, from a rock, is still a hard problem, as it was 30 years ago. So if it's exponential, you're still in the flat curve, in my opinion. And the progress is not just faster computers or understanding the human brain. The progress is really also better algorithms, and that has been much slower, in my opinion. I don't have a curve here, and it's probably exponential, but every exponential looks linear for a while, or constant. Will this advance humankind? You bet so, absolutely. The car is a young thing. In fact, right now, the car is an invention that kills about 42,000 people every year in US roads. 42,000 people is just about as many as we lost in all of Vietnam War. It's about 15 times as many people as we lost in September 11. And we never really think about it, because we always think it's the drunkyards that die. But it's not true. For every accident, there's a drunkard who dies and somebody else. The vast majority of accidents is caused by human error. 1,500 people drive into trees. 1,500 roll over in the United States and die. Something like more than 10,000 people drive because of drunk driving or speeding. It's a technology that we are really bad at handling in terms of statistics. Now, if you extract away from safety, you can look at productivity. The average American worker spends more than an hour a day in traffic, stuck in traffic, doing the same thing over again. Even with a Porsche, I can tell you it's no fun to be stuck in traffic. So what if you take this time and make people more productive, like let them sleep, or carry out a conversation, or read a book, or do email? I guess email we do during driving anyhow, but doing email in a safe way. Improve the quality of life. Aging population. My personal story here is that my dad has Alzheimer's, and we just are taking his car away right now because he's unsafe to drive. And what that means is he loses his independence, and as a result, he's become dependent. And the classical way from there is that people deteriorate very quickly. You can look into young people. How about your kid can drive himself to soccer practice? Or blind people, as Ray mentioned. You know, what if you could make blind people be independent in terms of transportation and drive somewhere with the appropriate interface? Highway throughput. That's something that people don't pay much attention to, but it turns out the national highway system is basically overcapacity. In areas like the Beltway, Los Angeles, Bay Area, of course, Chicago, you find these enormous traffic jams. If you take a highway at peak capacity, which is when it has the highest throughput, which is people drive about 55 miles per hour, lane can get you about 2,000 vehicles per hour, and you take a photograph from the air and ask yourself, you know, how many of these pixels in my photograph are taken by cars and how many are still free? You find that only 8% are occupied. That is, 92% of a fully used highway is still empty. And that's because we're just so lousy drivers. You know, we need the side distance and the front distance. So what if you could increase this with computer technology to 16%, right? And you can go wild. You can ask yourself about urban real estate. Half of Stanford campus is parking lots as opposed to office buildings because we don't like to park very far away. If we can have cars park themselves, you know, then they could drop us off at our building, and the parking lot could be somewhere else, and we could reutilize the space. If you look at this, this is not a claim about artificial intelligence, but a claim about the technology. There's something coming up that's going to be disruptive. It's going to be major, and it's going to be natural from the other side, even though it might look uncertain from this side. People have asked me to put a timeline on this, and I'm not very good in timelines, but I think in the next 2 years, 2008, we probably solve the next grand challenge. Maybe not next time, but 2008, which means in only a 5-year period, we made a significant advance in a field that we thought to be generically human and uncrackable by computers, which is reliable driving. And it's going to take a little bit of time to make these things reliable. 2010 might be a little bit optimistic, maybe 2012, 15, but no more than that. And then we have to worry about legal issues and so on, societal issues for this kind of new technology, which is much bigger. But at some point, we'll drive more miles autonomous than we drive the manual. And maybe it's 2030. It's actually not that unrealistic if we think about it. 20 years for a technology to mature is actually today a lot. So I hope with this presentation I could give you some insight in what's happening on the artificial intelligence side and robotics side. I think there's still a very clear line to be drawn not to confuse any of this. It's all smoke and mirror. Not to confuse any of this with human-level intelligence. There's no attempt and no methodology to take this and turn it into something that threatens us. I think what it really does is empowers us to be more effective people. And there'll be identity beyond human driving for all of us, of course. There's absolutely no question. But I think it's a good example of artificial intelligence moving to the next generation of technology. Thank you.